The Lions have never experienced promotion in the workplace ever. Because they've never had success to the point where they get picked up by other teams.
We landed in Las Vegas, we headed to the Circa, and we're just throwing around money.
Sometimes you just want to look at these teams and think, do they know that you can take best available?
Nobody was stealing from Matt Patricia's staff? That's surprising to me.
That's his cup of tea, or ayahuasca. This is for all my young kids out there, all the people that would date Bill Belichick.
Your best friend who's wearing glasses is actually pretty hot.
From Wondery, I'm Annie Agar, and this is The Offensive Line. Welcome to The Offensive Line, you guys. We're here to make some picks, talk some and hopefully make you some money. Guys, this week I was in Chicago for St. Patrick's Day. I trolled Bears fans a little bit with the jersey selection that I wore. So who better to join the show to get my Bears status back on track here than Adam Rank, NFL Network's Adam Rank, Bears fan and one of the best football trolls on the internet. But first, before we get to that, you guys, we're going to talk a little St. Patrick's Day. Okay, I got to bring you through my St. Patrick's Day. It was a time, let me tell you, this was my first St. Patrick's Day in the city of Chicago, because usually I'm traveling for March Madness. People were hammered on the side of the road by like 10 a.m. It is an experience like I've never had before. There was a tweet that went around, you guys, and I'm pretty sure this was not about me. Some girl tweeted out that wearing a Packers jersey in the city of Chicago to the Chicago St. Patrick's Day parade is absolutely criminal and that she would kick them in the river. Was not about me though. No worries there, okay? I don't know if there's some etiquette there in Chicago. Did I care? Absolutely not. I wore a 69 David Bakhtiari jersey around Chicago. Proudest moment. Also, guys, this was game worn and it was signed, okay? Bought it at an auction. Did it for the kids. Maybe top 10, one of my favorite moments in Chicago. It did get some love. It got a little love. There were maybe 2 or 3 other Packers fans that had a jersey on, which is a pretty low number for a holiday that revolves around the color green. Also, tons of Eagles fans, you guys. I don't know where they just spawned from, but about 50% of jerseys that I saw in downtown Chicago were all Kelly Green, Eagles, and they were screaming, "Go Birds." I have a video of it on social media. Really weird time, you guys. Weird time in Chicago. Was not expecting that. But I'm proud with my jersey selection. I'm proud with taking a stance against the city on its own holiday. It felt good. It felt good, guys. All right, let's get the show started. As you know, there are a lot of similarities in the NFL. Players have these weird connections all over the place that we don't even think of sometimes, you guys. So I'm going to play a little game, and I'm going to try to figure out these connections. We're going to play a little game. We're calling this completions. I'm going to name 3 people's names, player, coach, whatever, in the NFL, and I'm going to try to lock in the connection between these 3 players. So let's start with Julian Edelman, Mike Vrabel, and Jordan Hudson. Now, I know your immediate reaction to this is thinking, Jordan Hudson, is that some O-line, some obscure O-line I forgot about? Well, if you're on social media, your eyes have been burned by her social media posts recently, I'm sure. So you're probably thinking, what does a 24-year-old, a Super Bowl winning wide receiver, and an NFL head coach all have in common? Well, guys, one thing. They've all been lifted up by Bill Belichick. Let's do another one. Let's do Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel. Now, the obvious one here, and where your mind probably goes to, is these are all wide receivers who recently looked for a deal, right? Okay, they could say maybe they were drafted consecutive years. They all played in the SEC, which that's not the case because T played for Clemson. So what is the connection here? Well, let's focus on the recent deals maybe. The answer here is that they all recently got a bag. The only difference is Deebo's was a Happy Meal. And lastly, Jerry Jones' head, the Bengals defense, and the San Francisco 49ers. This one, clear as day to me. There's only one thing in common here. They all have nothing left there. All right, guys, I just mentioned the whole wide receiver situation with T, Higgins, and Jamar getting the bag. I want to talk about this for a second, okay? Because this is an anomaly to me. First off, the Eagles have 2 top wide receivers. They're paying $13 million a year less than these guys. It's because the Bengals wait until the very last second. They wait till the end, and this has happened a bunch with them. They wait till the end to have to set the top of the market. I don't understand it. I don't know if it's a negative testament to Joe Burrow, but if the bar is very high for the Bengals. Okay, this is a playoff team. If you don't make the playoffs when you're paying an absolute outrageous amount to your 2 wide receivers and your quarterback and your starting quarterback with literally no defense, and hoping that the offense just overshadows the defense enough, maybe keeps them off the field long enough to make it to the playoffs, This is exactly what happened in 2024. I'm so utterly confused at what their game plan is because they have no one on defense. I'm baffled, you guys. I don't know. You can tell me in the comments what you think of it, but the Bengals situation is an anomaly. I mean, it's great that they're the highest paid non-quarterback and wide receiver too. That's great. That's great for you guys. Great for the market. Not great for the Bengals if they do not make the playoffs. Moving on. Guys, there are a lot more connections with the NFL. I'm sure we'll be finding more of them soon. But the only person that spends as much time roasting people as me, the one and only Adam Rank, is coming on the show. Stay tuned right here on The Offensive Line. Welcome back to The Offensive Line, you guys. First of all, I want to say, I know you guys were a little mad at me this past weekend. We just talked about it. Being in Chicago in a Packers jersey. I don't want you guys to say I never do anything for the city of Chicago because we're joined by the one and only Adam Rank of NFL Network and the host of the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. He's got a Bears flag behind him, okay? So, you know what, guys? I'm branching out, okay? I'm not that biased on this pod. Thank you, Adam, for joining us. I appreciate it.
I feel like I'm being set up. Like, I'm like, look, this is my one Bears friend that I have. See, I'm not terrible. I'm not anti-Bears. I know one guy. I can call one guy.
That's it. Hey, the fact that your number is even saved in my phone, I actually don't think I have your number saved in my phone. So.
Oh, yeah, we had to go through. I think Matt had to go through that. So, like, listen, I understand.
But I appreciate you coming on. We have a lot to talk about. Even though it's off season, there's still things happening. This is, after all, kind of the Bears Super Bowl, right? I mean, this is like the third off season in a row they've won.
Listen, honestly, like, I understand that people are like, oh, you've won another offseason title. Like, yeah, but it's still part of the thing. Like, I'm still going to sit here and celebrate it. I'm not going to sit here and be bummed out that my team's going out there. Much like you guys, the Packer fans love the month of December and Toyotathon. Right. You're no longer Title Town, you're Toyotathon Town title or whatever.
So true. I don't know. It's almost very opposite because we hate free agency. The Packers hate free agency because Goody does nothing in it. Meanwhile, you guys just rake everybody in.
Fun, throwing out money.
Oh, it's amazing.
We landed in Las Vegas. We headed to the Circa and we're just throwing around money.
The graphic of the new O-line in Chicago with, the guys from each respective place that they came from, it's a killer graphic. We might have to show it on the pod. It's not bad. Do I see it way too many times on my Twitter timeline? Absolutely. But you guys got Jonah Jackson. You got Joe Thuney. You got Drew Dahlman. Totally revamped O-line. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what is the expectation coming into this season now for the Bears based on what you've heard, based on the new O-line, the moves they made so far? We'll get into Ben Johnson in a little bit, but just, I mean, got to be high expectations, right?
Yeah, you know what? And it kind of removes anything that you want to, any excuse that you want to make, any sort of thing where, hey, it's the offensive line, it's the play calling, it's anything like that. It's always something out there that there's some excuse for the Bears fans. We've now eliminated all of our excuses. Like, it's it. Like, you actually have to go out and win now. Like, for the last couple of years, have been able to, like, well, they lost 3 games by less than 4, and all that stuff. Yeah. It all goes out the windows. So there should be a high level of expectation for the Bears. And for anybody to think that the Bears can't turn it around, look at what happened last season in Washington. They were the number 2 overall selection for a reason. Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury go in there. They're all the way to the NFC Championship game. And you know me, I'm the biggest optimist for the Bears online. So I'm going to have a high level of expectation. I'm not one of those guys like, let's see how it goes. Let's let it play. Like, nope, I expect to be good in week 1 and I'll be disappointed if we're not.
Are we talking what is the bar here? Is it playoffs? Is it a certain number of wins? Is it Super Bowl? What's the baseline?
I do believe that with 7 teams that qualify for the playoffs, people should have a playoff expectation for this team. I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out and predict them to win 12 games. It's a matter of me, like, what 12 games are we going to win? We all know this. It's kind of like you're sitting there whenever you're watching Three's Company, that there is going to be a Three's Company. Look at me. Way to connect with Annie on this one. She's Googling Three's Company right now. What is that show? I meant Modern Family.
I think the last time that aired, the Bears won a Super Bowl or something, right?
I think it was. Yeah, that's. I stopped developing as a human being in the 80s. So, right, it was the last season of Three's Company, probably. So that's why my references are always drawn to like 1985. Like Linda Evans is not still the hottest woman in the world. I had no idea.
Dua Lipa, do you even know who Dua Lipa is? Should we get Adam cultured here a little bit?
Catch me up on everything else.
Absolutely.
It's fine. But I do believe that fans should expect to go to the playoffs. I thought the roster is pretty good. Even guys like Sauce Gardner were talking about this before. Like, this is a talented team. And even last year, before the Fail Mary, the Bears were 4-2. They're on the cusp of being 5-2. Now, obviously, everything happened the way that it did. And I honestly, at the time, very painful. Looking back in hindsight, it's kind of like, hey, we've got a link in our sink in the kitchen. And you go to fix it. You're like, oh, wait, there's dry rot here. We're going to have to replace everything. Similar to the Chicago Bears, like, that game and that loss kind of exposed a lot of things that were happening with Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus, cleared the decks, and then it cleared us to go out there and get Ben Johnson. And I apologize to your brother for me. I'm not sorry, but I do feel bad. He is one of the highlights. I love the photos of you guys and all your interactions on Twitter.
Thank you.
So he's the only one I feel bad for. Like Annie's brother, I feel bad for. Everybody else, not so much.
He uses that to his advantage. He makes you feel bad for him. It's ridiculous. Don't fall for it, Adam. No, every time you guys, because Antoine Randall went there and JT Barrett, every time a new guy would go, he would text me and say, they're traitors. They're all traitors. I'm like, you guys, the Lions have never experienced promotion in the workplace ever. Because they've never had success to the point where they get picked up by other teams. So I'm like, John, no, this is called a successful season. A successful coach gets hired other places. We had to go through a little workplace teaching him a little bit how that happens.
Nobody was stealing from Matt Patricia's staff? Yeah, that's surprising to me.
Oh, the fact that man got hired on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Oof. Wild to me. Anyway, okay, let's talk a little bit about Ben Johnson because a recent photograph came out of the man. Yeah. It aged terribly. It's like the president picture when they have like the first day in office compared to like after his 4 years. He looked a little rough. Could have been the lighting. We'll try to be positive here, like you said. What is going on here in this situation, though? Is it just because he's been working his butt off in free agency, or he's just trying to get everything together in the offseason? But he looked a little rough. Do you have any inside information on why he looked like he hadn't slept in about 3 days?
He's pulling the full heel turn. You see this in professional wrestling. Typically, they grow out a goatee to signify like, hey, look, I'm evil now. John Cena's not going that route. It's running concurrently with John Cena's heel turn. And I think your brother would appreciate this too, is like John Cena now looks haggard when he's out there. And similarly, Ben Johnson looks like he's not sleeping. And I think it also adds to the fact that like the food in Chicago will change a person. Like when you are living there for a long time, any significant amount of time, you're like, yeah, you know what? You can only have so much Portillo's or Giordano's. And it's not even those places. Because the best food in Chicago is always like, hey, we're going to go to this place by the Rosemont Horizon. It's a hot dog stand that nobody knows that it's a one-off. That's every town and village in Illinois is littered with these places. You can go to Wheeler and go to Joe's Pizza or whatever. And all these places will do that to a man or a woman. And it changes you. It changes your body chemistry. And I think that Ben Johnson is now morphing into a full-on Chicago person and starting to look a little weathered. But you know what? You saw it this weekend. The weather's changing in Chicago. Hopefully he'll get some color back into his face and be fresh for the draft. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I just chalk it up as a guy who's working his butt off, but also realizing like there's a lot more to do here than I thought there was.
It's true. It is like Detroit's a tough city. But obviously it's much smaller than Chicago. But Chicago's got a grit to it that's really hard to explain. Because everybody sees Chicago, they think Midwest nice. And everybody is, for the most part, they're nice. They're really nice people. But it's got a grit. If you're not there to work and you don't get up at the crack of dawn and start work, like it's just it's a tough city, wouldn't you say? There
is something about Chicago people. Yeah. The city of big shoulders. Like I know it's the cliche and everything like that, but there is a certain grit. And when you're out there, and it's not this, everybody thinks about the snow and stuff like that. It's not, that's not it. It's the days where you wake up and it's bright out and it's sunny and it's gorgeous and you walk outside and it's 20 degrees. 20 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm doing the math for you Americans. 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're like, how is this possible? How is the sun in the sky and it's so cold? Those are the days that really get you.
And those are the days you really got to lock in, Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Welcome to hell. Okay, let's talk about the future here for Chicago, the immediate future, because the draft is approaching. We've seen a million mock drafts. I would love your opinion on who the Packers, we'll get into that too, who the Bears are taking at 10, because they have some solid picks coming up in this draft. You'd think they've done everything in free agency. Oh no, that's opened up their entire draft board and people absolutely love to see it. I've seen the obvious one is ASHTON Jeanty thrown around. And I think that's at 10 strictly because that position, he probably wouldn't be a backup. Any other position, because Tyler Warren's been thrown around too, would be a backup in that role. And surprisingly, a lot of teams might not be looking for a running back in top 10. And the gap between who I've also seen thrown around for you guys, Amari and Hampton, isn't that big from what people are saying. So you could potentially trade down. The Steelers were a team that I guess was thrown around as a potential trade for you guys because they might be needing a quarterback depending on Aaron Rodgers' situation here. But it's a good place for you guys to be because there is that trade factor. You could go running back, and there are two solid running backs that don't have a huge gap. Is that a stretch to go ASHTON Jeanty at 10? Do you see other teams going for it? Do you see the Raiders taking him sooner? Because I think they have 6, right? At 6?
Yeah,
it's just
they're
a
at number
lot
6.
A lot of movement that could happen there. What do you see happening at your 10th pick?
The Raiders are interesting because they do need playmakers. And I think that, they've done a great job. Obviously, Brock Bowers was a great pick for them last year. Jacoby Myers is a pretty good wide receiver, but I don't know that he's a true number one in the sense of the NFL. But I will say they do need the Packers or the Raiders are the one team that you look at as a team that could possibly go out there and take ASHTON Jeanty. It's obviously in play for the Bears. It's interesting because heading into free agency, people are like, when we were talking about who the Bears could potentially pick. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, well, for the Bears to even consider going with a running back, they need to sign 2 guards, a center, a defensive end, and a defensive. Unless they do that, then you can't take it. And then the Bears go out there and do exactly that. So they traded for 2 guards. So it worked out perfectly to give them all the available options. And in my podcast, we were talking about this. The guys that I would consider at number 10, who you would absolutely have to take, ASHTON Jeanty would be one of them. Will Campbell, possibly. Tyler Warren, I think, the Bears could run a lot of 12 personnel. You saw this with Ben Johnson very much. And Ben Johnson's going to adapt to the players around him anyways. And then you also have Mason Graham. All 4 of those guys could be gone. So you're probably not going to be choosing between those 4 guys, but those are the players that you would think like, okay, these are guys that we can go after. And then the Bears will draft Will Johnson. Like, it's just going to, like, I'm just prepared for that. Like, hey, here comes Will Johnson, which would be great. I think it would be damning for, Tyreek Stevenson or somebody like that. But at the same time, if you have a player who is that high on your draft board, you can go out there and make the move. The whole thing, and I'm glad that Ian Cunningham is still around on the Bears, is don't let Ryan Poles trade up. Like, don't think the Raiders are going to take him, because if the Raiders take ASHTON Jeanty, fine. You know what? You can't base your whole draft on that. However, if he's there, I understand the science behind it. I would take ASHTON. If you have evaluated him as that guy, as the next LaDainian Tomlinson, that's fine. Yeah. I'm going to let them go out there and do their work and let them do their thing. And I'm not going to try to sit here. But my recommendation, now when I do my mock drafts, I don't do predictive pieces. I do mock drafts of like, here's who you should draft. And I remember last year, I got a lot of heat for this because I said the Raiders should take Brock Bowers. And the Raider fans were all over me. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. We already drafted a guy last year. And I'm like, you guys can run 12 personnel. He's actually not really a tight end in the sense that he doesn't block. So he's a playmaker. So I think for the Bears, they're in a similar situation where like, just take whoever would make your team better. And at number 10, hopefully you'll find a guy who will make your team better. God, I want it to be Mason Graham so bad, but I know it's not going to be possible. But that's what I truly would love to see.
Sometimes you just want to look at these teams and think, do they know that you can take best available? Cowboys in particular have an issue with that. But Packers, like, we're probably going to take some offensive tackle I've never even heard of in my life. And the mock drafts are the worst because if I see a guy's name, Cooper DeJean, for example, he was in every mock draft last year for Green Bay. Yeah. I knew immediately. We're not taking him. That's just how it goes with Green Bay. So I might have you talk to Green Bay management.
No, you guys are doing a great job.
As a shareholder, actually, I myself am not, but I have friends that are. We should go to those shareholders meetings and talk some sense into the management over there. All right, Adam, speaking of Chicago, now that we talked about the Bears enough, let's talk about their owner, someone that terrorized them for probably a decade. Aaron Rodgers is in the news again, guys. A quick disclaimer here. Before we get started with Aaron Rodgers conversations, he may have found a new home by the time this airs, but that also might not happen because it came out this week that it might not happen till after the draft, which is crazy to me because once again, I'm used to this too, Adam. My entire April and most of my offseason being absolutely dominated by Aaron Rodgers drama. Thank God I'm not a part of that anymore. I'm so sorry to all teams involved.
Are you old enough to remember the Brett Favre stuff?
Oh yeah. There's been quarterback drama in Green Bay since I can remember, since my Green Bay fandom started. I'm so glad that's not relevant to my fan base anymore because it sucks. He's sitting on a beach somewhere, contemplating his life, trying to get Minnesota to get him an offer. So let's start there. We're going to do a little dating game. Okay, Adam? Okay. It's the opposite of a dating game. It's like Love is Blind. Do you watch that show at all?
Oh, yeah. That show?
We've done segments on Love is Blind, which ironically Aaron would probably love because he's in a room by himself and he doesn't see anybody. So
darkness retreats, yeah.
That's his cup of tea or ayahuasca. Okay, so our bachelor today is Aaron Rodgers. We're going to pitch the 3 teams that are interested in him and why they would not make a good match. It shouldn't be that hard, but still at the end of the day, there could be reasons that he'd end up there. Okay, let's start with the Giants. We're going to try to convince each contestant not to get together with Aaron Rodgers. The New York Giants. Why should the Giants avoid Rodgers? I'll start first of all. People have said, he and Malik Neighbors would be a great fit. What a combo. Who would stop this two? I'm going to tell you right now, literally a blitz. A blitz would stop them, okay? I think it's a terrible pairing. They're probably going to go after Shador. If I'm the Giants, I would do that. But you tell me, why would this not be a good fit?
Why don't we ask Garrett Wilson how he feels about Aaron Rodgers? People
exactly.
Think, how long would it be until Aaron Rodgers is hitting up the Rams to make them trade Devontae Adams? Hey, see if you'll trade Devontae Adams straight up for Malik Neighbors. Let's see.
Yeah,
Just text somebody who played with him because it was Garrett Wilson who was actually giving him the business about dude, you were in Egypt when we were putting in these installs.
Right.
And you took the time off. And if you're Brian Dable, who was miracled another season, well, I mean, I think he deserves it. But if you go out there and you draft a quarterback and you draft Shador Sanders, now, number one, you're pretty much setting yourself up for 2 possible outcomes. Either you're getting fired and Dion's going to be the next coach of the Giants, or if Shador does well enough, you can be like, well, I should come back next year because we made all this progress with Shador Sanders. Instead, you're putting your entire, Brian Dable's going to be at worst, an offensive coordinator somewhere. But you're putting your coaching career on the line with Aaron Rodgers. And I'm looking around at some of the past coaches and being like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah. I am not doing that. I am not going to sit down at this 000 roulette wheel and take a spin and hope it comes up. Nope. I'm going to go with somebody young, somebody who might listen to me and might take my ideas. And I'm going to go in that direction. So Giants, pass on this one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not like a situation where these coaches are new, you guys. They need wins. They need at minimum maybe 10-win season or everybody's getting cut. Okay, let's move on to the Steelers, who probably are top of the list. Well, Minnesota's up there too, but Steelers would be a good fit. My argument here is 2 words, Arthur Smith. You think when Arthur Smith was mad that Russ changed the play at the line? I'm sorry, sir, welcome to Aaron Rodgers' world, okay? That he's going to be, I just can't wait for the camera to cut to Arthur Smith on the sideline when Rodgers audibles out of the 69th handoff that Arthur Smith has called on first down. This man is going to be literally the pits of hell if he has to deal with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers isn't going to like it either. So I think this is the worst it's a match made in hell, basically. The worst matchup I could see in an offense. But what are your reasons why the Steelers should not go with Aaron?
Well, part of it is I want to see the drama with DK Metcalf, George Pickens, and Aaron Rodgers. I think that
hilarious.
Part of it, that part would be so good. And Mike Tomlin at some point would finally be like, I'm not coaching anymore.
I'm out.
I had Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
But I again, like the Steelers have made, like, honestly, like Mason Rudolph, not bad. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is like every rom-com that you watch where you're like, hey, your best friend who's wearing glasses is actually pretty hot.
Just take the glasses off.
Take the glasses off. Once Mason Rudolph takes off the glasses, you're like, not bad. Mason Rudolph dresses up really nice, shows up, you know, all decked out for the prom. You're like, hey, you were here all along, Mason Rudolph. We should have never let you go.
That is the greatest comparison I've ever experienced. That's a great way of saying it. That's perfect.
Thank you. Tag me in that viral clip. No, but I think that's the best way to go. I won't even say that on Fantasy Live. I will save that for this show. The offensive line. That's amazing. That's my original. I might sneak it onto my podcast, but still, nobody watches that.
That's amazing. That was the line of the show by far. That's a great example. Okay, let's do, and this one I believe is Aaron Rodgers' match made in heaven, the Minnesota Vikings. This is just a wild fit for me, and ignore all the Brett Favre comparisons and how he'll probably defraud an entire state as well. There's a ton of this offense, the Vikings offense, so different from what Aaron's run. And Aaron has probably run the same offense the past like 10 years or so. There's a ton of motion, a ton of different formations. And I don't think Aaron would be a comfortable and or used to that kind of offense. And you're basically, I mean, you have to look at this from a personality standpoint because you've got the franchise ready for JJ McCarthy. Are you willing to piss everybody off basically to bring in Aaron Rodgers at the opportunity of maybe making it to a Super Bowl with? I don't know. It's just a lot of ifs there, and I believe that's what he's waiting on, right? He's waiting on the Minnesota offer to see what they
100%. That's exactly what he's doing. It's like when when Luke Skywalker gets his hand cut off and he's like, oh my God, I am fulfilling the prophecy. Much like my dad, I've lost and like, this is the same thing. Like you're like the NFL needs this, like the NFL already has to fight off this stigma. Like, hey, this is all entertainment and it's rigged. It's like him following the exact same path of it can't happen. Yeah. I would throw my weight around and be like, we're not doing this. We're not letting him go to the Vikings. But honestly, I think this is a lot of smoke from people who think this is a funny idea and think it would be, hey, it's hilarious. I truly believe that Kevin O'Connell's sitting there being like, I'm not doing this. Like Kevin O'Connell's not a dumb person. Like why he's seen this movie before. Why is he going to reboot the Brett Favre years? Like he's like, no, I'm good. I got JJ McCarthy, and they drafted JJ McCarthy for a reason. And I know that there are some teams out there, and I don't want to say who it is, who had JJ McCarthy as actually the number 2 quarterback off the board last year behind Caleb. And there were a lot of people that really love JJ McCarthy. And I don't want to, and if you want to make comparisons to Brett Favre finishing with the Vikings and everything, there's a real comparison with the way JJ McCarthy was handled at Michigan compared to what he'll be as a pro. Like we never really got to see Tom Brady be as great as he was in college because number one, they promised Drew Henson he was going to get a lot of reps because, you know, he was going to go play football for the New York Yankees or whatever it was. So there's a lot of promises being made. JJ McCarthy was asked to hand off the ball a ton. But I truly believe that if you put JJ McCarthy in this year, his floor is like Brock Purdy. Like we've seen what happens with these coaches from this Mike Shanahan coaching tree, what they do with these guys. And it goes from Kyle to Sean and all these guys. KOC would make him at worst Brock Purdy. And I think that he knows that and it's not worth the money or the headache. I don't think there's any chance. I think ultimately Aaron Rodgers just has to sit it out. And if there's an injury to a quarterback, a starting quarterback at some point during training camp, I think that's his best bet. And then he gets to do what he does best is miss training camp, feel super wanted. That's all he wants. He wants to feel wanted.
This is honestly his perfect situation.
Yeah.
He gets to take his little break, take his around the world trips while everyone else is at OTAs, and then come in when people need him the most. It might be like the savior mentality that he has. That might be perfect for him. So real quick, that's your take. That's what happens this season with no team picks him up. No team
picks him up, and then if the quarterback of the Providence Steamroller gets hurt, and I'm using the Providence Steamroller was once at one time an NFL team. I don't want to jinx any team or franchise.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, hey, this team in Providence or whomever, if a team loses a quarterback, I'm not, but we've seen it happen before. Sam Bradford famously got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. They had a quarterback injury. It happens, and it's unfortunate. Yeah. But
when it does, we're going to have Adam back on because it's a prophecy coming true.
Well, and Joe Flacco a couple of years ago with the Browns, he walked into you get to pick your spot. I think at this point, why not wait? And if a contender loses their quarterback or something happens,
it'd be a way to go out too, because then he could save someone's season, like Joe Flacco. Everybody loved Joe Flacco when he came to the Browns.
I loved him. Yeah,
brought in a level of skill that they didn't have.
He was getting MVP
we'll see, Aaron.
votes.
Well, and it'll get us talking about Aaron for like another 3 months. So that's exactly what he wants.
100%, exactly what he wants.
Jeez. Well, Adam, I appreciate the takes. I appreciate you being on as my One Bears friend. And again, you can find him on NFL Network as well as the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. Coming up, you guys, it is March, and we have a couple brackets to go through. All right, guys, welcome back to the Offensive Line. March Madness officially begins this week. So I'm going to do a little tournament survival kit, okay? Because there are a couple things we need to know going into this week. First off, how to sneakily watch games at work and or school. One of the best things that I've ever seen on social media, the reason social media was created in the first place, somebody had a friend of theirs in class. This is for all my young kids out there, all the people that would date Bill Belichick. When you're in class, they had their friend in front of them tape their phone to the back of their shirt and then just took their jacket off in class. Brilliant. Does it work? I don't know, but 10 out of 10 execution. At work, you're kind of on your own in that one. We're going to do a bracket shortly to explain different ways to watch at work. But in my opinion, call in sick if you can. If not, if you're maybe like a doctor, highly recommend not watching while you're at work. Please get the surgeries done. Okay, who to root for? This is a fun one. Obviously, you're gonna need a top seeded team to pick. Okay, my favorite is always Michigan State, especially this year. You got to pick kind of a homer, like a team that you wouldn't normally root for in the regular season, but you have some sort of weird tie, like your grandpa's friend's girlfriend used to go there, something weird like that. And then you have to pick an underdog, right? Like a Drake High Point is a fun one. Usually I go by names in this one. The Drake one is fun because think of all the Kendrick memes we can do during the season. That's where my mind goes, okay? So I'm riding with, I just told you my two teams, MSU and Drake. And lastly, how many brackets do you make? The number is unlimited, guys. That's a little Mean Girls reference. Make as many as your heart desires. The issue is keeping track of all of them. So I highly recommend printing them out. My favorite is I've seen people make a giant bracket on their wall. Little unrealistic. Fun if you live with people. If you live at home and you're not a degenerate and you have a nice home with decorations, probably wouldn't do that. But that's my survival guide so far. There's other things, snacks, drinks. Just make sure the fridge is stocked, guys. Sit on that couch Thursday morning and enjoy your life. Throughout the tournament, I'm going to be making brackets of my own. Why let college basketball have all the fun, okay? Why don't the ways that you watch the games have a bracket as well? So let's start there. First, you guys, let's look at some seedings, okay? This is the way to watch March Madness / college basketball games. There's only 8 seeds here because there are only 8 amazing ways to watch. Number 1 seed, coming in at the number 1 seed, is a sports book with a beer. This is an obvious number 1 overall. Highly predictable. Number 2, calling in sick and watching from home. I just mentioned it. Top tier, you guys. Number 3 is sports bar with your buddies. That is just top tier. Number 4 seed is in class / in a lecture. Number 5 seed is on your phone, but everyone comes around and watches with you. So you're probably at work. Everything stops when they hear the game on your phone. It's an amazing feeling. 6 seed is setting up as many screens as possible, wherever, and having, like I said, maybe a bracket on your wall. This is a total man cave move. Number 7 seed is at work on a computer during a Zoom call. This is getting less and less fun. And the 8 seed is on your phone, under the table, low volume. No one's there to cheer with you. Not great. Let's start with the first matchup. Clear number 1 winner. We got the number 1 seed going through. Sportsbook might be the best. 4 and 5, we have in school versus at work. I'm going to, this is kind of a controversial take here because is it more fun to watch in school when you can kind of be you got to be cunning about it. You could also skip class. Not that I ever did though, guys. I'm going to say the winner here is in school, in a classroom setting. Everybody's young. You're probably going to go day drink after class. It's a great time. All right, calling in sick or a Zoom call. There are no upsets in this one, you guys. Calling in sick, That might be my front runner, even though it's a 2 seed. It's the best feeling. It's like the feeling of the night before you have a day off is the better feeling than actually getting the day off. Knowing you should have been in work, but you called in sick, amazing feeling. Again, not that I know it. Okay, and lastly, our last matchup is the 3 seed at a sports bar or the 6 seed, multiple screens. This might be the toughest matchup of the first round. Because this is just preference. Do you like being around a bunch of people at a sports bar? Might not be able to hear as well. Or the multi-screen. And I gotta go with the upset here. I gotta take the multi-screen. Could be you could have friends over, but you're in the comfort of your home. You can watch as loud as you want. There's no other people, drunk people that might be fighting and or placing parlays. Again, not me. At a bar distracting you. All right, we're on to the second round, you guys. Sportsbook or in school? Again, I got to go with the sportsbook on this one. And then we have calling in sick or the multi-screen. Oh, man. This is a tough matchup. Let's think about this a second. Calling in sick could have multiple screens. So it could be a win-win there. This is a close one. I think I'm going to go with calling in sick. So our 2, we have the 1 and, is it the 1 and 2 seed? Yep, that's what I thought. That's what it'd come down to. All right, guys. So we have watching games at a sportsbook or calling in sick. You could basically watch anywhere at that point. Well, maybe not, because if you have coworkers, that limits you from going to a sportsbook. You can't go to the bar. What if your coworkers see you called in sick? You're out. You've had the flu for the past 3 days for all they know. Guys, you got to be careful there, okay? I'm going to leave this up to the people. I want to know in this matchup, you guys comment on social media, wherever you want to comment. Let me know who would win this matchup, because this is a tough one. And then we're not done, guys. This is one of many brackets. So this winner has to go up against other topics. We'll get to that later. But let me know, what is the ideal place to watch March Madness? I have my answers, but I'll leave it up to you guys. All right, guys, it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. No offense. This is time to just rant about something that's been bothering you. Could be sports related, could not be. This one's an interesting one for me, guys. And this is a very niche group of people that's gonna hit here. People I found out that are not my friends this weekend, because I had to explain to everyone what this word meant. So, are you ready? No offense, but Borgs are an absolutely ridiculous use of free will. You guys, if you don't know what a Borg is, I'm gonna give you a little lesson. I've taught about 10 people this weekend. So let me explain. All around downtown Chicago, if you saw people walking around with a water jug, that's a Borg. You name your Borg, we'll get into that momentarily, but it's literally just a fifth of vodka or whatever kind of clear alcohol you want. You keep half of the water in there, and then you squirt in Mio, which is that like no calorie, sugary thing that gives you energy as well. It's a heart attack in a jug, basically. It's extremely healthy. So it's colored. So you have a different color to your Borgs, and you just bring it around all day and you drink it. In terms of college, great idea. Am I a little jealous we didn't have it back then? Absolutely. But you're walking around downtown Chicago, you guys. This is just not the vibe, okay? You can't even go into a bar because you have a Borg of alcohol. You're not supposed to be open, drinking an open container, walking around the streets of Chicago. My mind was blown at the number of Borgs that were in Chicago, you guys. But that's not to say they're not creative. I mean, I give them credit. Some of the names are hilarious. So the whole point of the name is you incorporate the word Borg into the name. So like some of my favorites, Morgan Freeman. It's a great name. Kristaps Porzingis. It's just, the creativity is off the charts. I would love that in the comments too. Give me your best Borg names. I can't think of any other. I'm sure there's some great NFL ones. It's wild though. The Kristaps Porzingis is probably my favorite. Oh man, guys, we got to get off the Borg conversation. All right, before we wrap up the show, I wanted to give you all the opportunity to ask me some questions for next week's episode. So in the comments below and across social media, ask me and my special guest, my brother, Johnny, anything you want, any questions you want. Could be about Detroit, could be about the Packers. Whether it's about your favorite team or something about us, just let us know in the comments or on social media. And I want to try something new. I will put out a post later this week. I want you to respond with your most traumatic sports moments. And I will try to guess the team you root for based on that traumatic experience that you went through. It could have been years ago. It could have been something your dad experienced, whatever it is. I'm going to try to guess it based on that moment. So let me know in the comments, you guys. That is it for this week of The Offensive Line. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch our full podcast episodes on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I will see you guys next week. Enjoy March Madness, and as always, Des didn't catch it.